The Cole mansion stood like something out of a glossy magazine, polished marble steps, endless glass windows, and a garden that could have been painted by Monet. Yet, for all its beauty, it was a silent place. Inside, Alexander Cole, one of the most successful real estate developers in the country, sat at his desk, his phone pressed to his ear, rattling off figures and deals. He rarely looked up anymore. His life was a machine, efficient, relentless, and painfully predictable. In another part of the mansion, a little girl with chestnut hair sat in a wheelchair by the window, tracing shapes in the fog of the glass. Her name was Emily, and she had never taken a step in her life. Doctors said her condition was complicated, physically possible to improve, but emotionally locked. Years of therapy had yielded little progress. Alexander had stopped believing. He told himself he had done enough, paid for the best doctors, the best therapists. But deep down, he avoided the pain of hoping. That afternoon, a car pulled into the driveway. From it stepped a woman in her late 20s with warm brown eyes and a small suitcase. Grace Harper, Emily's new nanny. She wasn't polished like the rest of the staff. Her sweater was a little worn, her shoes scuffed. But when she saw Emily for the first time, she knelt down, not to greet her as the patient or the boss's daughter, but as a person. "Hi, Emily," she said softly, smiling as if they had been friends forever. "I heard you like stories." Emily's lips curved just slightly. That was more than Alexander had seen in months. Grace quickly settled into the household routine, but she didn't follow the same script as the others. Where the therapists had kept Emily in sterile rooms with exercise equipment, Grace took her outside. Every afternoon, she wheeled Emily into the sunlit garden, the air filled with the scent of roses and the hum of bees. One day, she pulled off her shoes and stood barefoot in the grass. "You know," she told Emily, "the earth feels like it's giving you a hug when you stand on it. Want to try?" Emily hesitated, looking down at her still legs. I can't," she whispered. "That's okay," Grace replied gently. "We can just pretend for now." But pretending turned into tiny attempts, Grace helping her shift her weight, stand for one heartbeat, then two. Emily would collapse back into her chair, giggling as though she'd just run a marathon. One afternoon, Alexander, on his way to a call, passed by the window overlooking the garden. He stopped mid-step. There, in the middle of the lawn, Grace was holding Emily's hands. Emily's feet, small and uncertain, were on the grass. She was standing, just for a second, but it was more than he had ever seen. For a moment, Alexander didn't know what to feel: shock, hope, or fear that it would all come crashing down. That evening, he called Grace into his office. "What were you doing in the garden?" he asked, voice tight. "Helping Emily stand." Grace replied simply, "That's dangerous. If she falls, she will." Grace interrupted, her tone calm but firm, "And then she'll get back up. That's how we learn, Mr. Cole." Alexander didn't respond, but something in his chest stirred. A memory of his late wife laughing with Emily as a baby, lifting her high into the air without fear. The next week, Alexander noticed something unusual. Grace wasn't just working with Emily's legs, she was working on her heart. They told stories together, played make-believe games, and laughed. Something that hadn't filled the mansion in years. One afternoon, he overheard them from the hallway. "You're stronger than you think," Grace told Emily. "No, I'm not," Emily said. "Yes, you are." Grace insisted gently. "Your legs can do it. But your heart's been scared for a long time. That's okay. We'll show it together." That night, Alexander found himself unable to focus on work. Guilt gnawed at him. All the money he'd spent had bought care, but not connection. He realized he had been protecting himself from the pain of hope, and in doing so, had denied Emily the one thing she needed most: his presence. The next day, he walked into the garden while Grace and Emily were practicing. "Mind if I join?" he asked awkwardly. Emily looked surprised, then shyly nodded. At first, Alexander was stiff, unsure how to encourage without smothering. But day by day, he began cheering for her, holding her hands, even carrying her into the grass so she could feel it beneath her bare feet. Grace smiled quietly each time. She knew this was more than therapy, it was healing. It was a warm spring afternoon when Grace decided it was time. The sun was soft, the breeze gentle, the garden alive with colors. "Today," she told Emily, "you're going to walk to your dad." Emily's eyes widened. "What if I can't?" "What if you can?" Grace replied. Alexander knelt several feet away, arms open, his heart pounding harder than in any business deal he'd ever made. "Come to me, sweetheart," he whispered. Emily gripped the arms of her wheelchair, then looked at Grace. Grace gave her an encouraging nod and helped her to her feet. Her legs trembled. The first step was tiny, more of a shuffle. The second was longer. The third made Alexander's vision blur with tears, and then she stumbled forward into his arms. He held her as though he'd never let go, his tears falling into her hair. "You did it, Emily. You did it." Emily clung to him, her own face wet. "Because you were here, Daddy." Behind them, Grace turned away slightly, her smile soft and proud. From that day, the Cole mansion was different. Mornings began with family breakfasts. Afternoons were spent walking in the garden. Sometimes a few steps, sometimes many. Laughter echoed through the halls where silence once lived. Alexander didn't just work less, he lived more. He was there for bedtime stories, for Emily's small triumphs, for the quiet moments. Grace stayed on, not just as a nanny, but as family. Alexander often caught himself wondering if she had been sent by fate itself, a reminder that some miracles are built, not bought. One evening, as the three of them watched the sunset from the porch, Alexander spoke softly. "You've given us more than I can ever repay, Grace." She shook her head. "I didn't give you anything you didn't already have. You just needed to believe." Alexander looked at his daughter, now standing beside him, her hand in his, and realized she was right. Closing line: sometimes the richest gift you can give is believing in someone until they can believe in themselves. Alexander Cole had spent years believing that money could solve any problem, yet his daughter's first steps proved that the greatest miracles come not from wealth, but from love, patience, and belief. Grace's kindness had not only helped Emily walk, it had bridged the distance between a father and his child, breathing life and laughter back into their home. In helping Emily find her strength, Grace had shown Alexander that true richness lies in human connection, in the moments we choose to show up for the people we love. And as the sun set over the garden, Alexander knew that the most valuable thing he would ever build wasn't his empire, it was the bond with his daughter.